Last year, Pope Leo XIV proclaimed St. John Henry Newman a doctor of the Church. On that same occasion, he named Newman, together with St. Thomas Aquinas, co-patrons of Catholic education. Newman spent much of his life thinking about education, and he argued that there is such a thing as a perennial education, an education suited to human beings simply because they are human beings. It does not change every time there's a new scientific discovery, a new educational theory, a new political trend, or a new economic demand. Newman calls this intellectual formation liberal education. He describes its purpose beautifully. The liberally educated person apprehends, quote, the great outlines of knowledge, the principles on which it rests, the scale of its parts, its lights and its shades, its great points and its little, end of quote. That is what Thomas Aquinas College offers you. You are here, in other words, not to accumulate information. You are here to acquire a formation, a knowledge of reality that is intelligible ultimately by knowing about God and his creation. This is very much what is expressed in Thomas Aquinas College's own founding vision, that liberal education should lead us toward freedom through knowledge and should satisfy the natural human desire to know. It has an order and a structure. It embraces the different branches of learning while recognizing their proper relationships. It takes place within a community of teachers and students, and ultimately, it is perfected by the knowledge of God. Newman anticipates a difficulty, or at least a question, about liberal education. What is the use of all this? Why spend 4 years reading Plato and Aristotle, studying Euclid, learning physics and biology, reading great works of literature, studying theology and philosophy? What is the practical payoff? Newman gives a remarkably simple answer. Knowledge is capable of being its own end. Think about something beautiful. Suppose you stand outside at sunset. The sky changes color. The light falls across the landscape. You stop and look because it is impressive. Someone comes along and asks, what is the use of doing that? What do you gain by looking at a sunset? You should find the question absurd. Looking at the sunset does not need to be justified by producing something else. It is delightful simply because it is beautiful. The same is true of knowledge. To know something true is a good thing. To understand something is a perfection of the human mind. We do not have to look for a practical use to justify the goodness of knowledge. And that is what Newman means when he says, knowledge is capable of being its own end. It's one of the great gifts you're being offered here, to ask, what is this? Why is it so? What follows from it? What is the cause? What is the nature of things? What is a human being? What is justice? What is happiness? And then to stay with those questions long enough to discover an answer. That last part is important because this education is difficult. It is difficult precisely because understanding reality is hard. Truth is not often immediately obvious. Understanding takes time. Great books do not give up their meaning after a quick glance. A difficult mathematical demonstration cannot be mastered by just knowing its conclusion. A philosophical argument cannot be understood merely by looking at a summary. This program is demanding, and so you will be tried and tested. And that is why you should be aware of some of the distractions of our time. Pope Leo XIV addressed precisely this kind of problem in his encyclical Magnificat Humanitas. He observed that the pervasiveness of digital media can create, quote, fatigue, boredom, and apathy concerning the effort required for seeking the truth, end of quote. He warns, too, that the speed and ease with which we can obtain answers and summaries can, quote, extinguish the desire to ask questions, end of quote. Notice what he's saying. The danger is not simply that technology wastes time. It can do that. The deeper danger is that it can change what we desire. If every question can be answered instantly, we may gradually lose the habit of asking good questions. If every difficult book can be reduced to a paragraph, we may lose the patience required to read books. If every problem can be handed over to a machine, we may become less willing to exercise our own minds. And that is especially dangerous at a place such as Thomas Aquinas College, because the purpose of your education here is not simply to get the right answer. It is to become the kind of person who loves the truth enough to seek it. Technology itself is not the enemy. The question is whether we use it as a servant or allow it to become our master. There will be moments here when you might be tempted to take a shortcut. You will have a reading assignment that seems too long, a philosophical argument that seems too difficult, a mathematical demonstration that you cannot quite grasp, a scientific analysis that seems obscure. And you could be tempted to look for the answer somewhere else. Take heart, because often the struggle itself is part of your education. Something happens when you remain with a question. You begin to see connections. You begin to distinguish what you thought you understood from what you actually understand. You begin to discover that one truth sheds light on another, and gradually the parts come to form a whole. That is the nature of a liberal education. It is the formation of a mind capable of seeing reality in its proper order. That is the extraordinary promise of this place. You've come here to read and learn mathematics, science, literature, history, music, philosophy, and theology. But you've also come here to learn how to see the world as intelligible, to see truth as something worth loving, to see beauty as something worth contemplating, to see your classmates as other human beings, not as competitors or instruments, but as friends and fellow pilgrims. And finally, to see all created things as pointing beyond themselves to their Creator. So as you begin your first year, I would encourage you to indulge one thing above all. Indulge your wonder. Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Do not be too quick to ask, what is the use of this? Sometimes the right response is, it is true. Sometimes it is beautiful. Sometimes it helps me understand something else. And sometimes the deepest answer is simply because I want to know. That desire to know is not an extravagance. It is one of the things that makes you human. And here at Thomas Aquinas College, you've been given 4 years in which to cultivate that desire, to let it grow, to discipline it, and ultimately to direct it towards the highest truth. May God bless you.